Today we'll be covering a standard opening for Keeper of the Forbidden Wilds. Keeper of the Forbidden Wilds is a moderate complexity spirit. He has quite a bit of offense and defense, quite a bit of control and utility, and only a little bit of fear generation, primarily from the things that he destroys. Now, the most important part of this guide are going to be the first two turns. I consistently do the same things on the first two turns on just about every one of my playthroughs. It's only on turn 3 and onward that the paths can kind of diverge and you can experiment and go for whatever you think is most important. So on turn 1, we're going to do G2 and G3, adding a presence from top track, gaining an energy, and gaining a minor power. Now, when you're looking at the minor powers, you're really looking for the fire plant cards. There are 3 perfect element cards in the minor deck. And if you can't find a plant fire, you can also try to look for the plant sun cards. But what's most important is trying to get more fire to unlock the first tier of your left innate, which is punish those who trespass. You're going to go ahead and play Boon of Growing Power. And I generally play this on myself and gain a minor power. You could play it on another spirit if you ended up drafting a really good first card that will help you solve lands. But the weakness of Keeper of the Forbidden Wilds is that the first couple of turns, you don't really have the tools to solve all of your lands. You're generally going to be taking a blight every now and then. You'll want to solve the lands that you can, but it's not going to be until later on when you're more powerful that you'll really be able to begin clearing and handling your lands. So that's generally why I play a minor power on myself, because I'm looking for those tools that will help me in the early game to solve the lands, because your starting cards aren't really going to cut it. So having played Boon, we'll at least be able to play Spreading the Wilds at the first 2 tiers. This will allow you to push an explorer out of a land, and if there are no explorers remaining, you can also add a wilds. So just to give you an example of one of the 2 things you're going to be doing with this power. So let's say they just built in the mountains and explored the sands. And again, this is towards the end of turn 1. You can choose, do I want to solve the build for next turn, or do I want to solve the ravage for next turn? So in this case, we're going to solve the build. We push the explorer out, and now nothing should build in the sands. However, we'll have to have something else to deal with the mountains there, such as a defend card. Alternatively, and this is what I usually do, is I'd like to stop the blight if I can. So I'll push that explorer out of the mountains, and then on turn 2, I will play Sacrosanct Wilderness, and that will allow me to deal 2 damage quickly to destroy the town before it's able to ravage. So on turn 2, you should have 2 energy left over from the last turn. You're now going to play G3, which will let you add a presence, probably into one of the lands that you just added a wilds to, and gain a 3rd energy. Now that 3rd energy is critical because that's going to allow you to G4 immediately after, placing a 2nd presence and gaining a power card. Now again, at this point, I'm still going for minor powers, and I will place 1 presence from the top track and 1 presence from the bottom track. So now I'm at 4 energy and 2 card plays. Now, if my plan on turn 1 was to stop a ravage by placing a wilds next to a town, then I would play Sacrosanct Wilderness. That would allow me to deal 2 damage to the target, and that would stop a blight. As for my 2nd card, I would play a minor power, hopefully one that has a fire plant, and that would unlock the first tier of my left innate. Now let's say maybe they're ravaging in the jungles and wetlands. I might plan for them to just let the blight go through, and I can clean it up playing Regrow from Roots. Hopefully you're going to hit the first tier of your Punish Those Who Trespass, being able to deal 2 damage in one of your lands, and destroying a Dahan, so be careful. Remember that whenever you make a Sacred Site, you get to push the Dahan out. That's primarily for their safety. And of course, you'll hopefully be hitting the 2nd tier of Spreading Wilds, being able to solve another build as well. Now, from this point on, you can really go in any direction that you want, but I generally do one of two things. If I have 2 energy saved over, and hopefully I do, then this is my go-to for turn 3. Do another double growth, doing G3 to gain that 3rd energy, adding a presence from bottom track, and then spending that 3 energy to add a 2nd presence and gaining another power card. Now, where you place the presence for G4 is important. Usually it's very difficult at the beginning of the game to reach all of the lands on your board. So this is your chance to add a presence somewhere on your board that will be adjacent to the rest of the lands that up until now you haven't been able to reach. And at this point, I generally will also gain a major power. As much as I like Towering Wrath, it's a really expensive card. I mean, it gives you the elements that you need. It is a Sun, Fire, Plant card, but there are better cards out there. So if I get a decent major power, then Towering Wrath is usually the first one that I forget. So with that, I'm able to now play any 3 cards that I want, and this is going to depend on what the board looks like. So after that, on turn 4, you'll want to Reclaim. You'll play another G3, adding a presence from top track. And at this point, you're now getting 5 energy per turn, 3 card plays. You have a major power already, and you can go in any direction you want from this point onward. So again, on turn 4, we'll play any 3 cards that we want, depending on what the board looks like. Now, jumping back to turn 3, if you did not have 2 energy, if you have either 0 or 1 energy, then I generally don't see any benefit from adding a presence from the bottom track because you're still going to be at 2 card plays. So I figure might as well get an extra energy. So I'll actually play G2 and G3, adding a presence from the top track, getting up to 5 energy, and I'll still go ahead and grab a major power. Now on this turn, you'll only be able to play 2 cards, but you'll have, I believe, 4 cards to choose from, 4 or more, and you'll have between 6 and 7 energy gained this turn. So play what you need to make the most bang for your buck on turn 3, and make sure that this time you save 2 energy for the next turn. Because now, having all of that extra energy, you can now G3 and G4, getting to that 3rd card play. At this point, I would probably gain another minor power, and then I would play 3 cards. Again, depending on what cards you played the last turn, your remaining cards will vary. Now, from this point on, I generally like to go for 7 energy 4 card plays in whatever order it makes the most sense for that particular game. And then, of course, just get the rest. Keeper of the Forbidden Wilds is very, very powerful when you're able to max it out, which you can probably max out Keeper of the Forbidden Wilds in just about every game, unless you're playing single player, in which case you might win before you max it out. But when I play with multiple spirits and the game drags on until we start getting into the 3rd tier invader cards, being able to double grow multiple times allows me to max out the spirits, and that's just insane. Getting 9 energy per turn, playing 5 cards, and assuming that you're picking cards with good elements, you're also able to take care of a lot of lands with your 2 innate powers, one of which can deal generally between 4 and 5 damage, and the other one is going to be stopping the builds and future explorers. So this is a very powerful spirit, especially once you've put all of your presence on the board. Now, what are force multipliers for the spirit? Energy. This is especially useful in the early to mid game when you're wanting to go for those double growths, because a lot of times you're going to be gaining major powers, you're going to be spending a lot of the energy, and so you might not always have the ability to save 2 energy per turn for the following turn so you can get double growth off. So having just a little bit of extra economy in the earlier game allows you to accelerate the growth of the spirit later. And the other thing is that the spirit is a generally slow spirit. You typically are having to react to the board and not be proactive until later on. And so if you're playing with Lightning's Swift Strike, for example, or your allies are able to play cards that allow you to play your slow cards in the fast phase, then that is actually very, very beneficial in the early to mid game. Now, as far as tips go, this G3, that extra energy, is so useful. It allows you to get that critical third energy so that you can add a second presence on the board. I've already covered this multiple times in this video, but I wanted to highlight again that this is the main strategy of getting that double growth so that you can get to 5 energy 3 card plays, eventually 7 energy 4 card plays, and so on. This is a summary of my standard opening for Keeper of the Forbidden Wilds. I hope this is helpful, and good luck defending the island.